The Philadelphia Phillies are clicking on all cylinders, but the outfield puzzle still seems to be the biggest problem. With Harrison Bader being the latest addition at the MLB trade deadline, Rob Thomson continues to sort through what is the best way to handle this combination of talents. With Nick Castellanos seemingly seeing his role a bit reduced in recent games, is this a trend we should be buying into or something just to take place in the short term? I do want to dive into what is being said on the situation by Rob Thomson, Nick Castellanos himself, Harrison Bader with a little bit of love in here, and sort of formulate what this outfield puzzle should ultimately come together to be. So appreciate you guys for tuning in as always, and let's get right into the topic of today. The first thing that I do want to start out with is a sign of growth from Nick Castellanos. As we obviously know, this is, I don't want to say ego, but the biggest personality or voice, the guy who has earned a little bit of that sweat equity for what he's done with this Phillies organization over the past several seasons to this point. Let's not forget that it was just this year that Nick Castellanos had to be sat down for a game for apparently crossing the line in a comment with Rob Thomson that had to do with him being taken out of a game for defensive reasons here. But there looks to be a little bit of growth from Nick Castellanos, as we have Nick Castellanos told at Tim Kelly Sports that Rob Thomson asked him to, quote, bear with me while he gets a frustrated Harrison Bader more consistent at bats. Nick told Thomson, quote, whatever you need. And to dive into the full context of the situation here, there was a lot of positive quotes in this article on Pattison by Tim Kelly here. And I did want to highlight this ultimate ending here that writes, for his part, Castellanos said that there continues to be mutual respect between him and Thomson, but did acknowledge, like all players, he wants to play as much as possible. Quote, well, I always want to play, but I'm not the manager of the team, Castellanos said. That's his job to kind of manage the pieces that he has. The only thing I can do is be ready. Ultimately, the Phillies are 73-53. They're currently on track to win their second consecutive NL East title and trying to fend off the Los Angeles Dodgers for the number 2 seed in the postseason, which comes with a first-round bye. There could come to the point in the offseason where it makes sense for the Phillies to trade Castellanos if they don't plan to play him every day. Bader and Kepler might look for a more guaranteed role in free agency than they currently have with the Phillies. But in the meantime, they're trying to add a third red flag to center field skyline at Citizens Bank Park. Quote, we're playing for far more than whether Harrison Bader gets a start or two more, Bader said. There's just such a bigger picture here. I'm pleased to be a part of it, and I know that my work ethic will allow the best version to come out when the team needs me most. And I do love that quote from Bader specifically here, who I think deserves some props for every single quote that I've seen, handling himself like the consummate professional that you ask him to be. This has been a dude that's been around Major League Baseball for quite some time, is familiar with being a trade addition at the deadline to help get a team over the top, and that's what he's being asked to do here in Philadelphia. I also think Nick Castellanos deserves credit for the mature approach to that. And I will say that whatever Nick Castellanos feels ultimately in his heart, that if you were to pour truth serum down him and get the honest answer, I honestly don't care about that he can feel however he feels. All I ask is don't be a distraction. Don't have any quotes that people can, cling to or make a bigger deal out of than may be the case. And Rob Thomson himself was the first to say that he thought the situation was overblown this year in their interaction with Castellanos. I think it's admirable that this is a guy that wants to play every day. And let's not forget that this time last year, or a little bit in the future this time last year, he was their most consistent hitter in the playoff series there. Obviously, the team did not reach the heights that they hoped to last year, but that was far from the fault of Nick Castellanos directly. Now, to reflect on what he's bringing to the team directly this year, he's got 16 home runs, 61 RBIs, a .291 on-base percentage there. Across his 470 at-bats, has 119 hits and 107 strikeouts there. We know the defensive shortcomings that do come with him for times, that he will give you everything that he has, but the reality is that everything he has is not a Gold Glove fielder there, that he's not going to be a right fielder that is winning any sort of those metrics there. He's not going to cover much ground. There is, we know the Castellanos experience at this point. The other point that I will point to here is I think Nick Castellanos is a guy that responds to this type of treatment, that it feels like every time Rob Thomson provides him with a little bit of a kick in the butt, that he takes it to another gear. And I think that is a positive and something that Rob Thomson should be aware of as we head into this final stretch. Now, there's other figures in this as well. Brandon Marsh, Max Kepler, Justin Crawford is still floating out there and could potentially be called up. Weston Wilson still somewhat a piece of the puzzle here. There are a lot of options in this outfield and probably more depth than I feel has been the case in quite some time. I did want to pull up this portion of Adam Aronson of the Sixers of Philly Voice. Also does some awesome Sixers coverage as well as his sort of interpretation of some of these quotes. And this is another guy like our very own Luke Arcani, who's on the beat and in the press conference for the most part here. So Adam Aronson writes, outfield mixing and matching continues. There remains plenty of uncertainty in the outfield for the Phillies. On any given night, it is a challenge to guess which of Harrison Bader, Nick Castellanos, Brandon Marsh, Max Kepler, and Weston Wilson will be in there. Marsh is a fixture against righties. Bader and Castellanos are always in there against southpaws. Wilson has the more limited role of the bunch as Marsh's platoon partner against left-handed pitchers. Kepler once seemed like an inevitable departure, but stuck with it and continues making hard contact. He is finally getting results of late, and his ability to play solid defense in either corner helps him out. The most interesting question, perhaps when the Phillies travel to New York for a 3-game series against the Mets early on next week, we will know the answer. What is manager Rob Thomson's preferred alignment against right-handed pitching? Marsh will either play center field with Kepler in left, Castellanos in right field, and Bader on the bench, or Marsh will slide to left with Bader in center field and one of Kepler or Castellanos in right field and the other on the bench. There are many moving parts, and Thomson seems like he is not in much of a rush to declare permanent roles. Castellanos sitting was once something that never happened, but the veteran has sat against right-handed pitching 3 times in the last handful of games. And I will note to that same point, we've also seen Harrison Bader start against both righties and lefties in center field, which I think is intriguing. I will say, out of this collective bunch, the most complete baseball player, I do think Bader holds that crown. That no, he's not going to take his talents to the offensive heights that a locked-in Nick Castellanos can, but when you balance what he brings to the table defensively, which is one of the better guys that can read a fly ball that I can remember, that when you watch his footwork out there, him getting under there, him covering ground, it is impressive the way that he can balance that defensively and still be, at this point, adequate at the plate. He has not hit to the level that we hoped yet, but we know it's in there for Harrison Bader. He's been around the MLB for quite a bit of time, and I still think it looks good. His processing is fine. His pitch selection is fine. His swing looks fine. We just have not seen quite the desired results. He hasn't been bad. This isn't anything to come down super hard on him, just not quite to the level that I think he will ultimately reach. Now, to continue on with his article from Adam Aronson here, that he also follows it up by writing as we pull up this portion of things here. And I do want to circle back to the Justin Crawford point, which is one of the bigger mysteries to me across this entire Phillies season. But I did want to read this second portion, as I apologize for the pop-up here. And he writes for the second part of this article that all signs point to the best alignment being Bader taking over center full-time, with Marsh and Wilson platooning in left field and Kepler and Castellanos platooning in right field. Castellanos is prone to a hot streak every now and then, but when he slumps, he is as brutal at the plate as any major league hitter. And no matter how he is doing at the plate, Castellanos is as harmful of a defensive outfielder as any in the majors. On the weak side of the platoon, Castellanos' defensive fertility would be limited, while a Marsh-Bader-Kepler unit would be considerably better than the average in terms of outfield defense. Castellanos, who enters Friday's play among 155 qualified major league hitters in F4, minus 0.8, has just not done enough for Kepler's resurgence to be ignored. His production against right-handed pitching is not good enough to make such significant defensive downgrade, going from Marsh-Bader-Kepler to Kepler-Marsh-Castellanos. But Castellanos has notably expressed displeasure with a potential role change before. Quote, or in parentheses, speaking of, Thomson should certainly return to lifting Nick Castellanos for defense late in close games when he can. Now, this threw a lot at us here, and I do think that these are all the questions that are flowing through every member of the Phillies organization's head at this time, from each individual outfield piece of the puzzle here to Rob Thomson directly. I bet if you were to ask him right now, that Rob Thomson just straight up is not sure what the ultimate outfield picture will be. And for what it's worth, I don't think he needs to know right now. That I think it is worth letting these guys dog it out for the final stretch of the season, seeing what is the best combination. How do these guys pair with each other here? And can we get one of the hot streaks from Nick Castellanos in the playoff perspective? If that is the version of him we're seeing at the plate, the version that we got last year in the postseason, that should be a lock, for he's an everyday right fielder. Now, to Adam's point here, I agree that he should not be immune from taking out for defensive reasons. The guy that I think ultimately got the short hand of the stick in all this is Johan Rojas here. That is a guy that I thought he has one defining trait that will likely keep him on the roster. I think it is pretty much entirely unlikely that we see Rojas again this year. And for good reason overall. It's probably for his best in the long run to keep getting consistent at-bats in the minor leagues. Now, the other guy that also continues to get consistent at-bats in the minor leagues is Justin Crawford here. That it is not too long ago, this quote coming back on July 31st, that Dave Dombrowski said he believes Justin Crawford is ready to play the major league level, but he needs to play, and Dave said he is not sure they have the capability to have him play full-time at this time. I do think it's interesting because this was a quote that came out before the Harrison Bader trade here, and it is something that they've been quite vocal and quite expressive about their belief in Justin Crawford. They have not, however, showed that with their decision-making and actions to this point, that he has remained in the minor leagues from start to finish this season. And for Crawford specifically, I kind of feel bad because I don't know what more the guy can do. That he's got wheels, he's been hitting the ball incredibly well at the plate, and I think probably the driving force and reason behind that is when you dive into the metrics a little deeper, it is not the most convincing that it will translate to a major league high-level hitter profile, that he's a very much a ground ball hitter. The power numbers are still not exactly where you would hope they would be. I was open to the concept of bringing Justin Crawford up and experimenting with it. Seeing exactly what you got is something that I think I would have prioritized in a way that the organization didn't. But I do wonder if that opportunity did slip itself. That maybe we see Justin Crawford when the rosters do expand here. But I don't think there's any world in which this guy is pushing for a postseason role or a key staple of the outfield at a point that I once thought was very much on the table for that. I think the ultimate conclusion here is competition brings out the best of it and everyone, and the Phillies are very much subscribing to that theory here. That we're going to see which of these guys do earn their keep, which of these guys are locked in and play to the standard of I should be an everyday outfielder. Those are the questions that we're going to get answered over these final stretch of the season, and it's going to be pretty interesting to note how Rob Thomson plays with each of these guys moving forward. But let me know what you guys think in the comments here. I do want your prediction or your best bet that if you're Rob Thomson right here, it is game one of the playoffs and you're penciling it in the outfield. What are the three? What are you putting? Who are you putting in what position here? What is your ideal outfield configuration for this Phillies team? Make sure you're dropping those comments below. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in this video. As always, we're getting close to the postseason here. There's some exciting stuff brewing, and we want as many of you as possible a part of the Phillies Digest family. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button if you have not just yet. Drop a like on this video here. Drop those comments on the outfield configuration below. I'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.